Rhythm and Soul Radio. I am Marco Nobles. The virtual studio is open, and we are joined on this occasion by singer, songwriter, producer. Did I miss a hyphenate?
Oh,
Uh,
keep going, keep going. I love it.
yeah. Wade C. Long, what's happening, man? How are you?
What's happening, Marco?
Yeah.
Doing
Good.
good, doing good.
Good to talk to you. Good to talk to you.
My pleasure.
So now, first of all, you were um, in 2020. You were a Soul Tracks Reader's Choice Award nominee for Best New Artist.
Yes, sir.
You released your first your debut LP during the pandemic in 2020. It's hard enough for folks to do anything during the pandemic, but as an artist, you released an LP during the pandemic when lots of things were shutting down and people were
Right.
trying to figure out what was going on. What made you decide rather than wait it out to just go ahead? Because a lot of artists said, "I'm going to wait. I'm not going to do it yet." You just went ahead with it anyway.
Yeah, I mean, well, the first thing with that album, it was easy to finish because everybody was on lockdown. You needed something to do inside. So the creative process kind of went by really smoothly. I
Mm,
happened to release a single right before the pandemic called Bull Jiving.
right.
And bull jiving kind of caught on to some stations a little bit unexpectedly. A funny story behind bull jiving. I
Mhm.
actually did it as a joke between me and my music partner Hans Anderson. We were joking about how a lot of my music sounds so 80s. And I
Okay.
went
Okay.
home and did a track just to finish that joke with him to send it. And then as we were listening, we are like, wait a minute, this sounds kind of good. So I was like, let me just release it. This world is crazy right now. Probably do nothing. But I released it. Stations loved it. They started bumping it. And when that happened, everybody was like, well, when's the album coming? And I'm like, I guess it's going to come out now. So a few months
Right.
later, I just finished getting everything together, went ahead and dropped the album. And a nice amount of people liked it. So it was a success.
All right, all right. Now that was the first full length, but you had done an EP a few years prior that was
Yeah,
also more dance oriented because I know you was involved in it. You worked with a dance group as well, kind of like in that middle time.
right. So I worked with a couple dance groups in the middle, but the EP itself that I had before that, Love Is, was actually mainly love ballads and laid back kind of music. So
Mm.
it had one dance song on the end of it, actually the title track called Love Is, but it was mostly smooth, kind of laid back stuff.
Okay, okay, all
Yeah.
right. So so now you were kind of back with electricity, you
Yes,
know.
sir. Yes, sir.
you know, and this is along the lines of the danceable, maybe not 80s vibe, but at least 90s vibe of this particular track. So talk about this song, Electricity.
Uh, yeah, so electricity, it's funny. Everybody is saying that it kind of gives them a 90s vibe, which I love. That wasn't my intention in making it, but
Okay.
the 90s, I'm sure you remember, was an amazing time for music,
Yes.
especially R&B music. So to actually get it compared to that is like the best compliment ever. Electricity kind of has a funny story too. I was kind of vibing and I was this young lady just talking and whatever one day, and we happened to touch hands, and a spark happened,
Mm.
and she was like, "Ooh, Wade, we have electricity." I was like, that's a song. You can't mess with us songwriters, but we use any excuse to,
Right,
to write
right,
a
right.
song. So I went home, wrote that out, and I was like, this needs to go on this album. So I decided to drop it as a first track for this forthcoming album that's going to come out in a few months.
Okay. Now, has the young lady heard the song once you finished it?
Um, she may have heard it. She's otherwise involved at this
Okay.
period, so I
Right.
let her go ahead and do her thing. I don't want to cause nobody any trouble.
All right. They'll be like, those darn musicians.
See, see, we always getting into trouble, man. I ain't nothing to care about. Yeah, terrible. Nobody relates to that.
Right, right, right.
I would like
You mentioned "Electricity" is now the first single of a new album coming up. So,
Yes, sir.
what is the new album, or do you have a? Is there a title yet? Is it pretty much formulated, or are you still working on it?
No, we're about ready to wrap things up. I would go ahead and release it here in the fall, but the fall is kind of a heavy time for like holiday music and things. So I will take some time promoting it and look for a launch date sometime in February. Um,
Okay,
and it's going to be called A Long Story, a little play off my last name. And
okay,
I'm really excited about the project. The second single that'll drop right before the album um, is a duet between myself and Hill Street Soul.
oh,
Um,
nice.
yeah, I mean, she is always just an amazing vocalist for anybody that's ever heard her. But we went a little bit different from her normal style on a
Hmm.
track called Celebrate You. I'm just so pumped about that. I also had a chance to work with number one smooth jazz recording artist Christian Demasones
Okay,
uh, on a track that will eventually become a single from the album, a track called Trends Jam. It's a nice little song that I put together for a couple of my nieces who really inspired me. Um, it really, the album has couple of maybe lesser known but equally talented artists. Um, a rapper by the name of Jay Sherwood. He's going to be on there. I really wanted to do some collabs on this
okay.
project, and it really is turned into a wonderful, wonderful project that I cannot wait for it to drop.
So talk about the difference you found, or the difference maybe in sound from the last album in 2020 to this album that'll be released early next year.
Oh yeah, so with nostalgia in 2020, I feel like it was more versatile. I did a lot of keyboard pieces that were just music. I dabbled into some rock, which I love. I always
Mm,
tell everybody I grew up listening from everybody from ACDC to Andre Crouch. Like literally,
okay.
that's how diverse the tastes of music were in my family and my household. And so I think I hit just about all of that spectrum on the first album.
Mm,
With the long story, I decided to keep most of it in the R&B vein. There's a song, obviously, with Christian that I mentioned. I'm singing a little background in that, but that's mainly keyboard. Aside from that, it's vocals, it's R&B, adult R&B, smooth R&B, however you want to phrase it. So I wanted to kind of keep it and not everybody have everybody all over the place with this particular one.
okay, okay,
So yeah, that's the main difference. It's more of a structured adult R&B type thing for the
okay.
second full length.
Got you. It's Rhythm and Soul Radio. We are talking with Wade C. Long. He's, a singer, songwriter, musician, producer, etc. We're talking about the current single, Electricity, but also talking about his music in general. With this second album, was it easier or harder to work on the second album? You mentioned the first album was kind of easy because you were just everybody was locked in the house. You kind of
Right,
was you needed to finish stuff anyway.
right.
Was it harder that we're starting to get out a little bit and things are quote unquote trying to get back to normal? So was it harder to kind of really get into getting this project done?
In some ways, it was harder just because now that I have a fan base, somewhat, um, I don't want to disappoint them.
Mm,
So I think paid a lot more attention. Not that I didn't the first time, but a special amount of attention to the quality of work. And I've actually taken more time, which has made it easier. I was originally going to release it probably about a year ago,
mm,
but it just wasn't where I felt like it needed to be. So I kept working on it. And I don't like to put stuff off like that, but for me, it was more important to release a quality project. And so I've been taking time kind of constructing it and making it the best that it possibly can be. So in that way, without having time crunch, it's been easier. But I think I put a lot of pressure on myself. And so
mm.
that kind of has made it a little bit more difficult. So I guess kind of both in a way.
Right. So you mentioned you didn't want to disappoint your fan base. So obviously you're gaining a fan base. So that's new in itself.
Right,
For you
right,
because even though you'd done music before, it wasn't really out there like this was.
right.
Um, so and gaining a fan base in the pandemic because it's not like you're performing shows and people can see you live and all of that. How did the fan base develop, obviously organically, but how do you think, is it just a function of, people just heard the music and then they just followed you, or what things were you able to do still, even though we couldn't really go out and do shows and that sort of thing?
Fortunately, we live in the social media age, so I did a, a lot of just a lot of reaching out through my Facebook page, facebook.com/Wade.C.long. Shameless plug right there.
There you
But
go.
I, but I did a lot of communicating with my fans from there. My Twitter and my IG at Wade C Long, since I'm doing
Yeah,
the shameless
yeah, do
plugs
it
here.
all. Yeah, do it all.
But I was, and even my YouTube page, which is YouTube Wade C Long. Um, I was able to communicate a lot through that medium that I think probably wouldn't have happened the same way in the
Mhm.
time when everybody was out there. Mention the song Bull Jiving again, and the surprising success of that. People found it fun. They found it like carefree. And so
Mm.
that kind of started to develop my fan base because people were so stressed then, rightfully so. You had the pandemic, you had a lot of racial injustice stuff, which is still going on, but just
Mhm.
added to the beginning of the pandemic. You remember it was just a
Yes.
wild time.
Yeah.
And Bull Driving, as well as some of the other tracks on the album, it just was able to help people to be in a more chill mood, and that kind of got things going from there.
Right, right, right. Um, it's interesting. You didn't your debut LP didn't get released until 2020. But you had been working and doing music for 5 6
Ever.
years before that. Yeah. Well, I was only just gonna, certainly forever, but I was just gonna go from the EP, just
No, that's
just
great. That's
starting
great.
there.
Yeah.
Uh, even though you were doing stuff before that. So what was the kicker to say, okay, I need to do the full length LP now. When you finally decide to do it.
People were asking for it, honestly. Radio was
Mm,
asking for it.
okay.
Um, they heard a couple of songs. They heard, like I said, they heard Bull Jiving, heard a couple of other pieces that I just sent out, and they were like, "This is awesome. When is the album coming?"
Mm,
So it kind of put me in a mode to rush a little bit more. I had stuff, but to me, an album is kind of like a movie or a story where you're going to put together something that actually connects. You don't just want to. For me, I don't just want to haplessly throw stuff out there. I want
hmm.
everything to connect and kind of make that belong together. So it took some time uh, to put the right pieces together for it. But basically, with those first couple of songs, radio was like, "This is nice, but we need a whole album of this." And
Right.
I was really flattered, but then at the same time, it was, it was a lot of pressure. I'm like, I wasn't planning this. I was, just messing around, and sometimes I guess it happens that way.
Yeah, yeah, no, absolutely, absolutely. So now you do everything yourself. I mean, we went through the hyphenates, but when you're putting together the album, you're doing the whole thing yourself. Like, producing, engineering, laying all the tracks and all that stuff. You're kind of completely self-contained.
For the most part, I mentioned my music partner Hans Anderson at the beginning. He's really talented cellist and a bassist. He plays a lot of bass on my projects. He also records a lot of my vocals, and that's really, I think, helpful for any vocalist, especially even vocalists who produce, to have that second ear in the studio with them, to actually be able to maybe see things through their ear that they can't,
Mm,
that you might not be able to, being the one that's recording. So he helped me a lot. And I want to, like I said, collaboration was important for me with this
hmm,
project.
hmm, hmm.
Another person that's on the album with me was amazing band leader. I would call him jazz band leader, but he kind of has a style of his own, and vocalist, Mr. Terrence Thompson. He's just an awesome artist, and he serves as the production consultant on this album. We also have a collab together, him and I. So he's another ear that I've been using for this.
Okay.
Um, so I really reached outside, uh, even aside from the people who I'm doing duets with, collaborations. Um, have a couple more people. Andres Coca, who actually helped me on my Longitude Part One. We did a song called Mr. Jones. He's providing some of the guitars for it, and hopefully he'll be doing some of the mastering for it as well. So
Okay.
I think if I gained any wisdom between album one and album two is just because you can do everything doesn't necessarily mean you
Mm.
always should. It's good to bring in other ears and kind of trust other people with part of your vision to help bring together a project that may, just might have a few more legs to it because it had other people involved that could hear some different things.
Right, right, right. So, you mentioned collaboration was important to you for this project. How did you, because you know folks from Hill Street Soul to all those you just mentioned. How do you kind of reach out and
Hmm.
pull this person and that person and that person together? Because a lot of times these collaborations are based on relationships. So,
Right.
it's are these just all relationships you've been building over time, or were you able to use the power of social media and networking through social media to kind of say, hey, you know, I've been doing this music. I got some music I'd love for you to join in with, and make it happen that way.
All of the above, really. With Hill, we were connected through somebody we worked with mutually, that I just happened to ask um, if they could reach out to her on my behalf. And they were
Hmm.
the person that did it. They were so gracious to do so. And surprisingly, once she heard the track, she was like, "I'm in," and I that kind of caught me by surprise.
Hmm.
But she liked, like I mentioned earlier, she liked that it sounds a lot different than a lot of the stuff that she's done. So that happened that way. Some other people, relationships have kind of been forged throughout the years. I mentioned Andres Coca. He was somebody that I reached out to for my last EP, Longitude Part One, Keys Please. Um,
Hmm.
I actually reached out. Actually, he reached out to me via Instagram, just to connect. And when I heard him play, I was like, "Oh, we have to make something happen." And so it's been different ways. Another thing about me, though, I'm kind of crazy in a way that I'll reach out to anybody if I feel
Hmm.
like they would make a good person to work with. For me, I will do whatever I can to reach out to anybody. For all the people who I named on the album, there's probably 10 times more that I reached out to that
Right.
I never heard back from or politely declined for whatever reason. So
Hmm.
I feel like if I want to work with them, I just take my shot. And if they say no, that's the worst they the worst they can do is say no.
Right, right, right. No, absolutely, and maybe they'll say yes the next time.
Maybe so. Maybe so.
Yeah, absolutely. Rhythm and Soul Radio, we're talking with Wade C. Long. The single is Electricity. We're going to get into it in a minute. But first, you did the shameless plug, but we're going to ask you to do it again to
Well, I
remind
appreciate that.
everybody, you know, website, social media, all that good stuff.
Sure, sure. So Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, most social media, you can just find me at Wade C. Long. Facebook is going to be facebook.com/Wade.C.Long. YouTube is going to be Wade. I'm sorry, it's going to be youtube.com/Wade C. Long. I believe I have to double check on the YouTube. I should know that. But the rest of those is where you can definitely find me. And if all else fails, do Google search for Wade C. Long. I'm the only one that'll come up, and you can find wherever I am that way.
Absolutely, absolutely. And the single again is Electricity. The album is A Long Story.
Yes, sir.
And that's coming. somewhere close to the top of 2023.
You got it.
And we definitely will be looking forward to that. Sir, thank you so much. Thank you for sharing the time and sharing the wisdom and sharing your journey a little bit with our audience and with our listeners. And we'll enjoy the electricity until we can get more more from a long story.
Absolutely. I really appreciate it. Thank you so much.
All right, it's Rhythm and Soul Radio. Here's Wade C. Long with electricity.